You're blocking my exit. That's the idea. I was standing in the gravel lot behind the Larkspur Hospitality Group's downtown office tower at 9:15 on a Tuesday, one hand on the service window of my food truck, the other still holding a rag smelling like burnt onions, and a silver sedan I did not recognize was parked sideways across the only way out. A woman got out of it wearing a blazer that cost more than my truck's transmission rebuild. I did not know yet that she was the reason my little catering business had a corporate parent company at all. I only knew that I had been on my feet since 5 that morning, that I wanted a shower and a plate of leftover rice, and that some stranger in expensive shoes had decided my night belonged to her. You have 30 seconds before I start reversing, I said. I don't care whose car that is. It's mine, she said. And you have a proposal due to my office by Friday. I'd rather not wait that long to talk about it. I looked at her properly then, late 30s maybe. Dark hair pulled back, tight enough to mean business. The kind of stillness in her face that comes from years of not letting anyone read it. I still didn't know her name. I'm Isabel Kane, she said, like she'd read the question off my face. I run the company that bought 60% of yours 4 months ago. You've been dodging my calls. I have not been dodging your calls. I've been running a truck by myself since my line cook quit. She tilted her head. That's worse. It means you're drowning and too proud to say so. I wiped my hands on the rag, mostly to have something to do with them. Miss Kane, I appreciate the ambush. I do not appreciate the timing. There's a diner 2 blocks from here, she said. Terrible coffee, decent pie. You're gonna sit across from me for 40 minutes and tell me what you actually need from this partnership. Because the version your account manager sends me is corporate nonsense, and I don't have patience for corporate nonsense at 9 at night. I have rice at home, I said, and a shower with my name on it. The rice will still exist tomorrow, Isabel said. Move your truck. Follow me. Or don't. And I'll assume Reyes Street Kitchen doesn't actually want the contract renewal. It's been begging my board for since March. That was the part that worked. Not the pie. Not her face. Though I'd be lying if I said that had nothing to do with it. It was the fact that she'd done her homework. That she knew the contract renewal mattered to me more than my pride did. And that she was willing to use that against me in a gravel parking lot at 9:15 at night. I followed her. The diner was the kind of place with a laminated menu and a waitress who called everyone honey regardless of age or rank. Isabel ordered black coffee and apple pie without opening the menu. I ordered a burger because if a CEO was buying, I intended to eat like it. So talk, she said. What do you actually need? 2 more trucks. A commissary kitchen big enough to prep for events instead of doing everything out of a parking lot at 4 in the morning. And somebody in your finance department who understands that a caterer needs to be paid within 30 days. Not 90, because I am not a hedge fund. I am one guy and $1,100 of walk-in refrigeration. She wrote nothing down. She just listened, elbows on the table, watching me with an attention that made me talk longer than I meant to. Why did your last operator quit? She asked, when I finally stopped. Because I work him like I work myself, and I don't pay corporate rates. I paused. That's on me. Not an excuse. It's an honest answer, she said. I don't get many of those from people who think I'm about to fire them. I'm not afraid of getting fired, I said. You don't employ me. You employ my business. There's a difference. Her mouth moved, almost a smile, gone before it landed. There's the difference nobody at Larkspur has the nerve to point out to me in a meeting. The pie came. She ate like someone who hadn't in a while, and somewhere between the first bite and the second cup of coffee, the CEO voice dropped about 10 degrees, and something more tired came up underneath it. My mother built this company, she said, out of nowhere. I took it over 18 months ago when she got sick. I did not want it. I wanted to teach high school chemistry, if you want the humiliating truth. I run event catering divisions for hotel chains instead, and most days I'm good at it. And some days I sit in board meetings wondering how I ended up being the person 1,200 employees depend on for a paycheck. I don't know why she told me that. I didn't ask. I only said, that sounds exhausting. It is, she said. Your truck smells like burnt onions, and you still looked happier tonight than I've looked in a year. I laughed before I could stop myself. That's the nicest insult anyone's given me all week. She asked about the truck's name halfway through her second cup of coffee. Reyes Street Kitchen, she said, testing it like she was pricing it. Your last name or a street? Both, I said. My grandmother's restaurant was on Reyes Street before the city rezoned it into a parking structure. I kept the name so the address would still exist somewhere. That's either very sentimental or very stubborn, she said. Can it be both? She almost smiled at that, the same half smile from before, gone as fast as it arrived. You strike me as a man who confuses the two on purpose, she said. It's a good defense mechanism. Keeps people from asking follow-up questions. Is that what you do? I asked. Confuse things on purpose. I run a company I never asked for, and I just spent 90 minutes interrogating a stranger about onions, she said. Draw your own conclusions. The waitress refilled her coffee without being asked, the kind of small kindness regulars get, though Isabel Kane did not strike me as a regular anywhere. She caught me noticing. I come here when board meetings run long, she admitted. Nobody from the office has ever followed me. You're the first. I didn't follow you, I said. You blocked my truck in. Details, she said. And for a second, the corporate polish slipped completely, and she just looked like someone who was tired of being the smartest, calmest, most composed person in every room she walked into. By the time the check came, 40 minutes had turned into 90, and I had somehow agreed to a second commissary space, a faster payment cycle, and dinner again next week, though I noticed she never actually said the word dinner. She said, "Come by the rooftop garden at the office building Thursday. I need someone who knows what they're doing, and my landscaping company clearly does not." That was how it started. Not with a kiss, not with a confession. With free pie and a woman who ran a company she never wanted, asking a stranger with burnt onion hands to fix something for her that had nothing to do with catering contracts. The rooftop garden was a disaster. 3 inches of standing water in the planter beds, half the herb containers drowned, and Isabel standing in the middle of it in boots that were absolutely not meant for gardening, holding a hose like a woman diffusing something. "I don't actually know what I'm doing up here," she admitted, the second I stepped off the elevator. "Clearly," I said. "Who told you standing water was good for basil?" Nobody. I panicked and turned everything on at once. She handed me the hose like it was a weapon she wanted out of her hands. "You grew up on a farm or something. Your file said your grandmother had a restaurant. You read my file. I read everyone's file. It's a bad habit." She crossed her arms. "Also, yes. I researched you before I blocked you in with my car. I'm thorough. It's not a crime. It's mildly concerning." "Fair," she said. And for the first time, I saw her laugh without catching herself halfway through it. We spent 2 hours draining beds, rerouting a broken irrigation line, and replanting basil that had a fighting chance. She was terrible at it in the specific way of someone who had never once been allowed to be bad at anything in public. She overwatered. She yanked weeds by the leaves instead of the root. When I corrected her, she didn't get defensive. She just adjusted, quick and quiet, like someone taking notes. At one point, she knelt to pull what she was sure was a weed and came up holding a fistful of the basil we'd just replanted, roots and all, dirt scattering across her blazer. "That was not a weed," I said. "I'm aware," she said, holding it up like evidence against herself. "I would like the record to show I am excellent at things that involve spreadsheets and extremely bad at things that involve dirt." "Noted," I said, taking it from her and pressing it back into the soil, patting the ground around it like it might forgive her. "It'll probably survive. Basil's forgiving like that. Unlike people," she said. "Some people," I said. "Not all of them." She looked at me sideways at that, dirt still on her sleeve, and didn't say anything else for a minute. Just kept working beside me in a silence that felt less like awkwardness and more like two people getting used to being unimpressive in front of each other on purpose. "You're patient," she said at one point, kneeling in the dirt in a $2,000 blazer she'd apparently forgotten she was wearing. "I run a food truck," I said. "Patience is the whole job. Impatient men become bad cooks or good salesmen. I only know how to be the first one." She looked at me a second too long after that. I looked away first. There was a second visit to the rooftop the following week that I hadn't planned on staying for. I'd come to check the irrigation fix was holding, found her up there alone after 7 with her shoes off and a laptop balanced on a planter box. And instead of leaving, I sat down across from her on an overturned crate and we ended up splitting a bag of pistachios and talking for 2 hours about nothing that mattered. Her childhood in a town small enough that everyone knew whose car was parked where, my years working other people's kitchens before I saved enough to buy the truck outright. "You don't ask me about the company," she said at one point, cracking a shell between 2 fingers. "Should I? Everyone else does. Investors, board members, half the men I've had dinner with in the last 3 years. They ask about Larkspur before they ask about lunch." "I don't care about Larkspur," I said. "I care whether you're actually eating anything besides pistachios at 7 at night." She looked at the empty bag between us like it had betrayed her. "That's fair," she admitted, and something in her shoulders came down half an inch that hadn't been down the whole time I'd known her. After that, the visits became something we didn't name. She'd text me around 8 some nights. "My commissary kitchen has terrible energy. come make something in it so it doesn't feel like a tax write-off, and I'd let her in after hours, and she'd sit on a steel prep table in her work clothes while I cooked, and she stopped being the CEO for an hour at a time. She was a menace with a knife. She burned rice twice. Once she reached for a pan straight off a lit burner and hissed and yanked her hand back before I could stop her, a thin red line already rising across her palm. "Sit," I said, already reaching for the first aid kit under the sink. "Let me see it." "It's fine," she said, in the exact tone of someone for whom nothing was fine. "Isabel, sit down." She sat. I held her hand steady under the tap, then wrapped it, and she watched my face the whole time instead of her own palm, which told me more than the burn did. "You're very careful with something you barely know," she said quietly. "I'm careful with things I don't want to lose," I said, before I'd fully decided to say it out loud. She didn't answer that. She just turned her bandaged hand over in mine, slow, deliberate, and when I looked up, she was closer than she'd been a second ago, and then she wasn't across the table anymore at all. The kiss was careful at first, the way you touch something you've been told not to touch. Then it wasn't careful. Then she pulled back, breathing like she'd run somewhere, one hand still wrapped in gauze, the other flat against my chest like she was checking whether either of us was actually real. "This is a problem," she said. "I know. You're a vendor. I'm the CEO of the company that owns 60% of your business. There is a document somewhere in HR with my name on it, explaining exactly why this is not allowed. I know that too." She stepped back, putting the steel table between us like it might help. "My mother built rules into this company because a regional director slept with a hotel manager 11 years ago, and it nearly killed a merger. The board does not forgive that twice. Then we're careful," I said. "Careful isn't a strategy, Danny. It's a hope. I can live with hoping," I said. "I've been living without it for a while. It's worse." She looked at me like she wanted to argue and couldn't find the argument. "Thursday," she said finally. "My place, not the office. Bring the blue bowl." The blue bowl was mine, a chipped ceramic mixing bowl I'd hauled from my grandmother's kitchen into every commissary I'd ever worked in. The one I used for spice rubs because she'd sworn it made the seasoning sit better, some superstition I never bothered disproving. Isabel had noticed it the second week, asked what it was for, and I'd told her the whole ridiculous story about my grandmother refusing to sell the restaurant even in her last 2 years because she said a business without a cook who loved it wasn't worth owning. Bring the blue bowl became our version of an invitation neither of us wanted to say out loud. For 3 months, that was the shape of it. Quiet dinners at her apartment with the blinds drawn early. Careful distance at the office. No lingering. No inside jokes in meetings. Nothing a camera or a coworker could catch and turn into a headline. I learned she hated small talk and loved terrible reality television she'd never admit to watching. She learned I still called my mother every Sunday and that I flinched at conversations about my father, who left when I was 9 and never came back to explain why. We were careful. We told ourselves that mattered. Once, at an actual company function, a holiday reception in the lobby with a string quartet nobody asked for, we stood on opposite sides of the room for 2 hours doing an elaborate performance of professional distance. She introduced me to board members as a valued vendor partner. I called her Miss Kane in front of Nadia and watched her jaw tighten at the formality of it. Near the coat check, with no one close enough to hear, she leaned in just far enough to murmur, "You're doing an excellent job of pretending you don't know what my kitchen smells like at midnight," and then walked away before I could answer, leaving me standing there with a glass of bad champagne and absolutely no composure left. That was the night I understood how much effort the distance actually cost her, and how tired she was of paying it. The regional operations director was a man named Preston Vale, mid-40s, the kind of ambition that wore a good suit and talked over people in meetings while calling it collaboration. He'd wanted the consolidated vendor integration role that Isabel had been quietly steering toward me, on the strength of the contract renewal and 2 flawless corporate events I'd catered that spring. Preston believed, with total sincerity, that the job belonged to whoever performed confidence the loudest, and my kitchen kept embarrassing that theory with actual numbers. He'd started needling me in meetings weeks before he ever said anything that mattered. Comments about food trucks playing in a league they didn't belong to. A joke, once, about how convenient it was that Miss Kane found time in her calendar for vendor check-ins with me specifically. I'd let it slide because giving him a reaction was exactly what he wanted. In a quarterly vendor review that spring, Preston had presented a slide deck arguing the integration role should go to a candidate who, quote, understood scale, meaning someone who had never run a kitchen but had run a spreadsheet about kitchens. Isabel had asked him 3 pointed questions about his actual operational numbers, and he hadn't had answers for any of them. And the room had gone quiet in the specific way rooms go quiet when someone senior has just been embarrassed by someone they outrank on an org chart but not in competence. He'd smiled through it. I'd learned by then that his smile was the thing to watch for, not his temper. Afterward, in the elevator, he'd stood a little too close and said, "Careful, Reyes. Isabel likes underdogs right up until they cost her something." I hadn't answered. I hadn't needed to. I just hadn't known yet how, right? In his own poisonous way, he'd turn out to be about the costing part. The mistake happened on a Saturday, 40 minutes outside the city, at a farmer's market Isabel had read about and wanted to see because, she said, she was tired of every outing being something that could end up in a company newsletter. We told ourselves the distance made it safe. We were adults with functioning judgment and a bad sense of geography. We walked past stalls of heirloom tomatoes and local honey, and somewhere near the cider stand she reached over and laced her fingers through mine without thinking about it, the way you do when you've briefly forgotten the rules exist. "I should let go," she said, already starting to. "Don't," I said, and closed my hand around hers instead. We had 11 good minutes like that before I saw Preston Vale standing near a parked car across the lot with his phone raised, not hiding it, not even trying. Isabel felt my grip change before I said anything. "What?" she asked. "Preston." Her face went still in that specific way I'd learned, meant she was doing math nobody else could see. He lowered the phone and gave us a small, satisfied nod, like a man who'd just found the missing piece of a puzzle he'd been assembling for months. We drove back in near silence. "How bad?" she finally asked. "Bad enough," I said. He wasn't being subtle. He wanted us to know. He caught us in the executive floor hallway 2 days later, timing it for the gap between the elevator and the boardroom, where there were witnesses close enough to matter, but far enough not to hear everything. Isabel. "Danny." He said my name like it amused him. Interesting weekend for a vendor and a CEO. "Not here," Isabel said, voice gone to ice. "Agreed," he said, "though somewhere less public would suit you both even better." He held up his phone. On the screen, Isabel and me, hands laced, her head tipped toward mine. I stepped closer, not to threaten, just to stop him enjoying the moment quite so much. "Say what you're actually here to say." He smiled like he'd rehearsed it. "The vendor integration role gets finalized next week. Danny withdraws his name from consideration, and my last 2 performance reviews get revisited without your fingerprints on them, Isabel. Simple trade. Nobody has to see this. You're blackmailing us in a hallway," I said. "That's your big move. I'm offering a quiet solution," he said, "unless you'd rather explain a policy violation to the board yourselves." Isabel's face gave away nothing, though I'd learned by then what stillness cost her. "Delete the photo," she said. "After we agree," he said. "No," I said. Both of them looked at me. Preston's smile thinned. "You think you have leverage here? I think you're a man standing in a hallway hoping 2 people panic before lunch," I said. "It's not going to happen." Isabel put a hand lightly on my arm. "My office," she said to me. 10 minutes. Preston's smile came back, thinking he'd won something. "Not you," she added, looking at him. "HR will be in touch." Her office door closed behind us, and for a second she just stood with both palms flat on her desk, breathing. "This is bad," she said. "I know. If he sends that photo to the board, there's an inquiry. Doesn't matter that nothing improper happened at the office. The vendor relationship alone is enough to trigger it. I know that too. Stop saying, she snapped, and then immediately, quieter, "I'm sorry. That's not fair to you." "It's fair," I said. "You're allowed to be scared. I am too." She looked up. "I have spent 18 months proving I didn't inherit this job. I earned it." One photo and everyone gets to say I got soft because of a man with a food truck. Some will say that regardless, I said. "And you? What about me? Are you ready for people saying you got close to me for a contract renewal?" I looked at her for a long moment. "I can live with people being wrong about me," I said. "I can't live with handing Preston Vale a steering wheel over both our lives." She sat down slowly behind her desk. "He'll send it," she said. "Then we don't give him what he wants either way," I said. "We tell him no, together, and we take whatever comes." "Together," she repeated, testing the word. "Yes, you understand what that costs in this building." "I'm starting to," I said. She typed a short message to Preston on her phone before she could talk herself out of it, showed it to me before she sent it. "We will not comply. Do not contact either of us privately again." "Good?" she asked. "Good," I said. Nothing happened for 3 hours. Then her assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Nadia, who had been with the company almost as long as Isabel's mother, appeared at the loading dock where I was restocking the truck for a Thursday event. "Mrs. Kane needs you in conference room C," she said. "Now would be better than later." Conference room C had Isabel, an HR director named Priya, and 2 board members joining by video. And on the table between them, printed and unmistakable, the photo Preston had taken. Isabel did not look at me when I walked in. It hurt more than it should have, and I understood exactly why she did it. She was protecting the process, protecting me, protecting the company from any appearance that feelings had already made the decisions that numbers were supposed to make. I sat down across from Priya, who had a manila folder in front of her thick enough to mean this had already gone further up the chain than one photo should have warranted. One of the board members on the screen, an older man with a gravel voice, cleared his throat before speaking. "We want to be clear, this isn't a witch hunt," he said. "We're a hospitality company. Personal relationships happen. What we can't have is the appearance that a vendor contract was shaped by one." "I understand," I said. "Then help us understand the timeline," Priya said, opening the folder. "Danny," Priya said, "we need to ask you a few questions about a potential conflict of interest involving a vendor relationship and company leadership." "Understood," I said. "Is the image authentic?" one board member asked from the screen. I glanced at Isabel. She still wasn't looking at me. "Yes," I said. "Are you and Miss Kane involved personally?" I wanted to say yes, because hiding it suddenly felt filthy. I wanted to say no, because one word could cost her everything she'd built. Isabel answered before I could choose. "We began seeing each other outside of business hours," she said. "It was private. No company resources were used, and his contract received no preferential treatment beyond what the numbers already justified." "Do you agree with that?" Priya asked me. "Yes," I said. "Did Miss Kane pressure you into this relationship in any way?" Priya asked next, and I almost laughed, because the honest answer involved her blocking my truck in with a sedan and threatening my contract renewal over pie. "No," I said. "She did not pressure me." Isabel's eyes flicked to me then, just once, just barely. The questions went on for 20 more minutes. Dates, meetings, invoices, every answer factual and clean, and somehow humiliating. Love reduced to a compliance checklist. Afterward, Priya asked me to wait outside while Isabel stayed in the room. Nadia was at her desk when I came out. "You all right?" she asked. "Define all right," I said. "Nobody ever can." She almost smiled. "For what it's worth, I've watched a lot of men flatter Isabel Kane over the years," she said, lowering her voice. "You're the first one who's ever argued with her like she's a person instead of a title. That's all I'm saying," she added, and went back to her screen. By the end of the day, Isabel and I were barred from private contact while the board reviewed the situation. My vendor account was frozen pending review, which meant every event on my calendar for the next 3 weeks was suddenly at risk. She passed me once in the hallway, with 2 board members flanking her, and didn't stop, didn't speak, and her eyes found mine for exactly half a second before she looked away. That half second ruined the rest of my week. Preston, meanwhile, wore his week like a man expecting applause that never arrived. He talked louder in meetings. He made comments about integrity until people started finding reasons to avoid the break room when he was in it. "Tough month," he said to me once, cornering me near the loading dock. "For who?" I said. "For me." No integration role, no cozy little arrangement with the boss, no more contract favors. I looked up at him. "Preston, do you ever get tired of listening to yourself?" His face hardened. "You think this ends well for you?" "I think you should move along before Nadia hears you talking like this," I said, and he glanced toward her desk, where she was watching him with the calm expression of a woman, deciding exactly where to file a complaint, and he left without another word. That night, I sat in my empty commissary kitchen with the ovens off and finally admitted something to myself I'd been avoiding since the divorce that ended my marriage 4 years earlier. I had built a whole life designed so nobody could ever get close enough to hurt me again. It had worked. Nobody got in. Nobody made a mess of me. But nobody got close either, and Isabel Kane hadn't ruined my careful little peace. She'd shown me the difference between peace and hiding, which was an extremely inconvenient thing for a woman to do to a man who liked his rice cold and his heart untouched. On Monday morning, I woke up before my alarm, made coffee, and wrote a letter withdrawing Rhea Street Kitchen from consideration for the vendor integration role and formally ending the exclusive contract with Larkspur Hospitality Group, effective immediately, citing a desire to avoid any appearance of conflict of interest. I didn't write about love. I didn't write about courage. I wrote something clean enough that nobody could argue with it, printed it, and drove to the office. Nadia saw me coming with the folder under my arm. Does she have a minute? I asked. Nadia looked at the folder, then at me. She has several, if you're carrying what I think you're carrying. Am I that obvious? Men trying to be noble walk like they're heading into a root canal, she said, and buzzed me through. Isabel's office looked the same as always, but she didn't. Tired around the eyes, a stack of papers by her laptop, coffee gone cold. Danny, she said. Isabel, we're not supposed to be talking privately. I won't be your vendor much longer, I said, and set the folder on her desk. Her eyes dropped to it. No, she said immediately. I haven't even opened it, I said. I know what it is. Then this will be quick. Don't joke, she said. I'm trying not to make this worse. You staying quiet makes it worse, I said. Me stepping back makes it possible. She came around the desk. You built this contract from nothing. You cannot throw away 3 years of work because of me. I'm not throwing it away, I said. I'm choosing what actually matters more, and it isn't a line item on a vendor spreadsheet. Her voice cracked slightly. What if you regret this? Then I'll live with the decision I made like an adult, I said. What if you regret it? Then I'll tell you, she said, almost without meaning to. I stepped closer, close enough that the desk didn't separate us anymore. Isabel, I love you, I said. No candlelight, no perfect timing, just a man with a folder full of paperwork saying the sentence he'd been avoiding for 3 months because once it was out, there was no going back to rice and quiet nights alone. Don't, she whispered. Too late, I said. A broken sound came out of her, half laugh, half something else, and she covered her mouth with one hand like she could take it back. I am not worth you giving up your career, she said. My career was never the safe thing, I said. You are the first risk I've taken since my marriage ended, and it's the only one that's felt like it was worth it. She wiped her cheek, annoyed at herself for the tears. If you withdraw, the conflict of interest ends, she said slowly, like she was working through it out loud. The board can't hold anything over either of us, and you'd still want this, without the contract, without the secrecy, without the excuse of business dinners to see me. Yes, I said. Ask me directly, she said. I know what she meant. If I'm no longer your vendor, I said, can we be together, out loud, in front of everyone? She looked at me for a long moment, then picked up the pen on her desk and signed the withdrawal letter, hand shaking slightly. I hate this, she said. I know, I said. I also love you. I had no clever answer to that. Thank God, because a joke would have cheapened it. She set the pen down and came around the desk without checking the door first, without strategy, and I met her halfway. And the kiss this time wasn't careful at all. It carried every stalled conversation and every night we'd cut short because one of us still had a hand near the break. You're unemployed, in a manner of speaking, she said against my mouth. I prefer independently available, I said, and she laughed through the last of her tears. A knock hit the door before either of us could step back. Nadia opened it just enough to see the folder, the signed page, our faces. Conference room traffic is heavy, she said dryly. You may want to decide if you're hiding or walking. Isabel looked at me. I took her hand. Walking, I said. Walking, she agreed, and squeezed once. We stepped into the corridor together, and the office did that strange electric hush that happens when everyone pretends not to stare at once. We made it halfway down the hall before Preston Vale rounded the corner from the side office, practically glowing. Well, he said, loud enough for the open floor to hear. This looks interesting. I assume the board meeting didn't go your way. I stopped. Isabel stopped beside me. He looked at our joined hands and smiled wider. Still not very careful, are we? I withdrew my company from the contract, I said. Effective this morning. Isabel signed it 10 minutes ago. His smile froze. What? There's no conflict of interest to report anymore, Isabel said, voice steady. You no longer have leverage over either of us, Preston. That door is closed. You think people just accept that, he said. I shrugged. People accept a lot when the alternative is listening to you. Explain integrity out loud. A low sound moved through the floor. Not quite laughter. Close enough. Preston's face reddened. You're making a mistake, he said. Maybe, I said. But it's mine to make. Isabel looked at him the way she looked at a meeting she'd decided to end early. Any further concerns go through HR, not hallway theater, she said. Nadia, from her desk, added, I can print the complaint form if you're having trouble finding the process. And that time people did laugh, and Preston's mouth opened and closed with nothing in it, and he stepped back and let us pass. We kept walking. Someone started clapping, a big guy from finance named Marcus, who once told me my catering saved a board dinner from total disaster, and he clapped twice before looking embarrassed about it. And then Nadia joined, and then a few more, awkward at first, and then not like a movie, just human. At the elevator, Isabel turned back to the floor. "I'll address the company once the board finishes its review," she said. "Until then, everyone still has clients. Get back to work." A few people laughed again. The doors closed on us together. "You do realize you just told everyone to get back to work in the middle of our grand exit," I said. "I'm still the CEO," she said. "And you're still unemployed by choice." "Temporarily unemployed," I said. "Where are we going?" "My place," she said. "Then yours. Then we figure out dinner like two adults who've made a complete mess of company policy." "Ambitious," I said. "I'm bored with safe," she said. And I understood exactly what she meant, because I'd spent 4 years building a life around that same word, and it had never once made me happy the way the last 3 months had. The board review took another month, formal and careful and full of language designed to protect everyone but comfort no one. Isabel kept her position. There were consequences. Real ones. She recused herself from any vendor decisions touching my business permanently, and the company rewrote its disclosure policy from the ground up so that no future employee would have to sit through a hallway ambush like the one Preston staged. She told me later that the hardest part of the whole review wasn't defending herself, it was sitting across from the same gravel-voiced board member and hearing him say that her mother would have handled it exactly the same way, which made her cry in her car afterward for the first time in longer than she could remember. Preston did not get the integration role. He left for a competitor 3 months later, and according to Marcus, he was already telling people there that he'd built the very disclosure policy Larkspur adopted, which nobody at his new company believed either, because ambition that loud rarely survives a reference check. I rebuilt Reyes Street Kitchen as fully independent. No parent company, no corporate ceiling, just me, and eventually 3 trucks and a commissary kitchen I owned outright. Isabel showed up at my first solo pop-up event with a card that read, "Try not to argue with the health inspector before Friday," and no company logo anywhere on it. 6 months after the night, she blocked my truck in with her car. She moved out of her downtown apartment and into the small house I'd bought with the settlement money from selling back my share of the parent contract. She claimed it was because the commute was shorter. I knew better. She liked the quiet. She liked that nobody in that house needed her to be made of steel. The first night with her boxes still stacked in the hallway, I pulled the blue ceramic bowl down from the shelf and mixed a spice rub the way my grandmother taught me, and Isabel sat on the counter watching, still in her work clothes, looking exhausted and happy in a way that made my chest ache. "This is strange," she said. "Living somewhere that feels chosen instead of assigned." "We can still mess it up," I said. "Probably not the most romantic response," she said. "It's honest," I said. "I like honest." "I know," she said, and leaned her head against my shoulder. "Are you scared?" "Yes," I said. "You?" "Terrified," she said. "Good. Then neither of us is being reckless about it." A year after the night she trapped my truck in a gravel parking lot, I still had the blue bowl. I still called my mother every Sunday. Isabel still burned rice on purpose sometimes, claiming it built character, and complained through half the shows I made her watch. And somehow that made all of it better instead of worse. We were not perfect. She still worked too much. I still went quiet when old fears surfaced without warning. We argued about calendars and cabinet space and whether a taco counted as a full dinner. But we learned to talk before the silence turned into a wall between us. And we learned that keeping something private is not the same thing as hiding it. And that choosing a person is never one dramatic hallway moment. It's 1,000 ordinary decisions made after the dramatic moment is long over. Reyes Street Kitchen catered its first fully independent gala that spring. No parent company logo on the napkins, no vendor codes stitched into the tablecloths, just my name on the sign out front and my grandmother's recipes on every plate. Isabel came as a guest, not a client, seated at a regular table instead of the head one. And when a stranger asked her what she did for a living, she said, "I run a hospitality company," and left it there. No title attached, like the job had finally stopped being the whole of her. Near the end of the night, she found me by the kitchen doors, still in my apron, hands smelling like garlic and citrus the way they always did after a long service. "You look happy," she said. "Actually happy, not just relieved it didn't burn down." "I am," I said. "Turns out I like my life better with a mess in it." "I could have told you that 8 months ago," she said. I was busy blocking a truck in with my car. "Best decision you ever made as a CEO," I said. "Debatable," she said, smiling. "Best decision I ever made as a person, though. That one's not close." We stood there in the noise of a kitchen winding down, and I thought about the man I used to be, the one who measured a good night by how empty his calendar was, and I did not miss him even a little. Sometimes I still think about the man I was that Tuesday night, standing in a gravel lot with burnt onions on his hands, ready to go home to cold rice and call that a full life. He thought safety meant nobody could ever reach him. Then Isabel Kane blocked his exit with a company car and ruined every plan he had. Best thing that ever happened to him. Would you have walked away from a career you'd built from nothing for a relationship that finally felt real? And how many chances would you have needed before you believed it was worth the risk?